Hey, what's up, Fred?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Good day. I like to say I'm not mourning anything, and there's nothing good about mourning except for the relief.
Fair enough. How are you?
I'm good. Yourself?
Good. Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
good.
Now, I was just getting ahead of myself. I read Superstar Leadership, and yeah, I get it.
Okay. Well, let's talk about it. And it's pretty much the same thing as close more deals for real estate professionals. Did you see that one?
I haven't read through it yet, but
Same stuff.
like I said, it's probably the same thing, just geared towards real estate, which is perfect because when I read Superstar Leadership, uh, I mean, because I'm a broker, realtor, I can like instantly relate it to uh, the real estate agency and brokerage industry or community rather, and in addition to like what we talked about yesterday with the looming lawsuit that's creating all this noise in the marketplace and just creating an awareness and a shift in how in the perception of not just the brokerages and the agencies, but also in the clients that we serve, as far as like the sellers and the buyers in particular. So, uh, I mean, yeah, it's on point.
No, I definitely appreciate that because we're just going straight into it like while we're here. So as far as like what you're observing in your specific particular industry, what are you seeing? Because I know that there's been some major changes and developments since the last time. Like people this time last year had no idea. I mean, there's a major lawsuit. Things have like shifted. I guess the sentiment is negative. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you can give me some viewpoints on that and how that correlates into actually the Close More Deal book and or Superstar Leadership, because they're pretty much the exact same thing.
Yeah, well, in terms of the lawsuit, really nothing's changed as far as like the industry standards and practices. The only thing it's now the with the lawsuit, it's just created more of an awareness, and it's shifting the perspective of the buyers and the sellers, the client, the end, that the real estate community serves, the realtors and specifically, in terms of our realtors standards and practices, nothing's changed because commissions have always been negotiable, and disclosure has always been like a highlight of all of the training that we receive from these groups like NAR, like the National Association of Realtors, and a lot of real estate brokerages. That's the biggest thing that they talk about. Unfortunately, there is a lot of misinformation in the way that the lawsuit is communicating publicly, as far as like the effects of it regarding to the the highlight of the lawsuit, which is the commissions. Saying like that the realtors or NAR, uh, which is the biggest, which has the biggest settlement in this lawsuit so far, uh, about standardizing the commissions, which is that I guess is the highlight of the lawsuit, and it's been communicating that it's a standard commission rate of 6%, when the reality of it is it's always been negotiable between the seller and the listing agent, and then the listing agent paying it out to compensating the buyer's agent, the person that the agent that works with the buyer to to get that deal, get that transaction done. So again, it's just created a lot of noise, and to me, it's just causing confusion. However, it's not necessarily a bad thing the way, I feel like, because I work a lot on the agency side, and I'm observing a lot of the agents, sellers and buyers in particular, never really had complaints, but sellers, their biggest complaint whenever, whenever we go out on these appointments and stuff like that is the fee, for listing their house. But that's only a complaint when they get a listing agent that, just lists their house on the MLS and it puts a sign in the yard, but doesn't go, it doesn't have a higher standard for helping the seller reach their goal, which is to sell their house. So.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And for people who don't know what it is, talk a little bit about what exactly is going on in the industry and how it's impacting people in the industry and as well as out of the industry, because that's key.
Yeah, well, right now, the impact is still unknown because right now the impact is just creating more of a, what's the word, like a frenzy as a, kind of like a confusion right now and uncertainty. So we have yet to really see the impact of it. But in a lot of like, in terms of, I guess if I was to label the impact, it would be more so on the we're just all in the realtor side. I can speak more on is people are just kind of waiting, the agents are kind of waiting to see how this is going to affect them in their business. Because on the legal side, changes are being thrown around like that are going to take effect either mid-July or mid-August. But until then, it's business as usual. And so for the agents out there that their business is good, they got, they have leads, they're the leaders, the top 1%, the top 1% of the sellers in the industries, nothing has changed for them. I mean, their business as usual. But it's the other, well, let's not say 1%. Let me backtrack and say the top 20% of the agents that are out there that are doing good business, their business as usual. When the 80% where it's just kind of like hit and miss, they get business here and there. Those are the ones that I would say are really in a high state of uncertainty and anxiety and not knowing how this is going to affect their business. And that's just kind of my opinion on the situation from my observations and for what I've been reading about the lawsuit and observing. I lost your sense.
Yeah, so I say got it. So for people who don't know, just walk us through exactly what happened, who it affects, when it's supposed to happen, the where and the why. Like if you can go into more graphic detail, because this is important, because from what I'm understanding, here's the problem, and that's the reasons why I wrote that book, Close More Deals for Real Estate Professionals. Because when I first started having clients in that industry in particular, and you had a chance to see like the testimonials, right? These aren't like low level, entry level, no disrespect or no dig, but there are different licensing and certifications and designations that you have to have in that industry. And I think that's what I'm personally seeing just from doing my own research. Like it's an emotional purchase, and we tend to make it a lot more technical. And as a result of that, that's how lawsuits get started. There's some type of misunderstanding. Everything's been in black and white up until this point in time. And now you have magically this one lawsuit that it's shifting the entire industry, even though it's been status quo for a very, very long time. So when I had a few of those guys who were in that book specifically say, hey, we want you to talk about this stuff because the emotional side of real estate isn't what's quite talked about. And the reasons why I was able to speak to that was because there's a lot of correlations between how the automotive industry is as well as the real estate. It's a very emotional purchase. It's a very large purchase. Next to getting a house, a car is one of those things, unless you get an airplane or something like that. But for the most part, what we're looking to do right now specifically is to figure out like exactly who it affects, why it affects them, how did this even get started? Because that's what people really want to know as far as like what happens next. So if you can help us paint that picture, then that would be super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, in terms of how it got started, yeah, I was watching a couple of videos by some attorneys that kind of talked about the background of the lawsuit. With one seller. I don't know the details, but they started up a lawsuit that then became a class action lawsuit that a judge approved, and then based on that class action lawsuit, more lawsuits started becoming class action lawsuits. So it was kind of like a domino effect, and who it affected was specifically realtors, which, we have a big organization called NAR, which is the biggest, association group, in America with like, I think at the time it was like 1.6 million members in NAR. And so that's why, they're, having to they have the biggest, they're taking the biggest brunt of the settlement fees. But it also affects, it affects other, not just the NAR, but it affects the members, and it just affects the entire agency and brokerage industry as a whole, whether you're associated with NAR or not. So if your business is to help sellers sell their house and help buyers, purchase a house, then it that's a direct impact on the professionals in that industry. The secondary effects is, I wouldn't say the sellers are as effective. I think they're going to come out the biggest winners in this whole, I call it awareness as opposed to a situation. In the awareness of the lawsuit, it's good for the sellers because really, like I said, these have been standard practices in our industry as professionals, that the commissions are negotiable, period, point blank. And so somewhere along the line, I don't know when it started, but at some point that stopped being communicated. And I feel like that was the effect of, the lawsuits, because sellers started feeling like they didn't have a choice but to accept that in order to list your house with a realtor, you would, expect to pay 6% commissions. And that commission was also shared with the buyer's agent. So technically, I want to say it started like with the seller questioning, like, well, why do I have to pay the buyer's commission? And why do I have to pay 6%? And why am I paying the buyer's fee? When, if they're being represented by a buyer, shouldn't that buyer be paying the fee? And the answer is yes, technically. But the standard practice has been the listing agent would negotiate a fee to list the house with the seller. And then they would also, and it's in the listing agreement, they will also tell the seller, well, the reason why it's, let's say 6% is I'm going to, 9 times out of 10, your house is going to be sold by your buyer's agent. As a listing agent, my job is to market the house, get exposure, and drive traffic, so we can, get your house seen the quickest and to sell the house. Not only that, but we also provide, we're experts in knowing, what houses are selling for in the market. You can go to any public website and get an ideal, but, realtors, with our resources, we know, like sometimes the seller might list their house for less than, they might think their house is like, let's say, just say a number like 350, when a realtor might look at it and say, well, I think we can get you 400,000. So, that's just the service we provide the sellers. And so again, but I think it's just been miscommunicated without getting too long-winded, that listing fee has always been negotiable. And also on the buyer side, the miscommunication on the buyer side is that for the realtors, our professional fee is free to them, when the reality of it is we would attempt to collect the fee from the seller, but if the seller refused to pay the commission, then we have in our buyer's agreement, which hasn't been, which is practiced by good realtors. Good realtor would have a buyer's representation agreement, and it would specifically lay out in the contract, not that I'm giving legal advice or anything, but it's just what it is. But it's specifically in the contract, if the seller doesn't pay my fee, then this is the fee I'm going to charge the buyer. And the buyer would have to understand that and agree to it in a buyer's representation agreement. But whether or not that has been practiced or communicated, I think is the disconnect between the professionals, the sellers, and the buyers as a whole. And at the end of the day, I think the shift is going to be more so in educating the buyers that working with a professional realtor isn't a free service. And the realtors, the professionals that are working with buyers, are going to have to do more in terms of showing value, showing leadership, and explaining to the buyers why it's a benefit for the buyer to work with the professional, because, there's things that the professional knows that can help them get, find a house back quicker, negotiate a better deal for them than the buyer would negotiate on their own. There's all these things that the professional does bring value to in service to the buyer that the professional can communicate. And all this lawsuit is doing is bringing that awareness out. And so now the professional will have to now educate and train themselves more, to be a better realtor, in terms of it. And like you said, like there's a lot of, like in your leadership, in your closing more deals book, it talks about, getting mentorship when there's so many trainings that we get on the professional side in real estate. A lot of it is very technical, social media, how to take pictures, how to use the contracts, how to this and how to that. I would say there's not a lot of training for realtors on leadership, on positioning yourself to bring value to your client. How do you communicate that? And when I read your book, I really felt like that closed that gap. While there is leadership training in our industry, even that is the very, very few people take advantage of it because there's a barrier of entry to get to that training. I'm not going to call it out by name, but there's one in particular that I went to sign up for a couple of years ago. Not that I needed it, but I wanted I just wanted the exposure to the network, and it required me to get I'm trying to think of the word. A reference from another, like a person that's been to that program. I had two people and I got letters for both of them. So I got a letter to get into that group. And then I had to show like the courses I've done, any community services that I've done, I'm applying for leadership training, and because I wanted to just kind of raise my standards, and I felt like that was the direction. But they had all these barriers of entry, and then even after I submitted that application, it came back denied because there's a very limited. It was only available to a very limited group, and even though I felt like I was highly skilled with my military background, with my service in the community, with who I was and what I stood for, my values, and the references that I gave, I was still denied. And I was like, wow. And then that just totally turned me off from that training. So long story short, what I'm trying to say about that is, in our industry, I would think the biggest impact in the community on the professional side is, if anybody out there, whether it's the association of the brokers or even down to the individual agent, leadership training, not, get off the technical training is good and it's going to serve you in your business. But if you really want to thrive, and cut out, like, as you like to say, cut out all the noise, so it stops creating this confusion and uncertainty. Leaders, what you can do right now is develop yourself as a leader, so then that way you can, when it's the time to reposition yourself is now, not waiting until the effects of the lawsuit take place, because sellers, two things are true. Sellers still need to sell their houses and buyers still need to buy. And if the professional industry crumbles, those two things are still going to be true. And the sellers and buyers are just going to find another way if not enough leaders are developed on the professional side to provide more value to the clients, and basically educate them and communicate better with them about the benefits of working with a client, and just being honest and truthful. Like, look, our fees are negotiable, and let's talk about this. Let's communicate, why is this important to you, and so on and so forth. So, and the top sellers are always going to be able to negotiate the best fees. That's just how it is in any industry. You could probably attest to that in your field of business too, in sales.
Well, yeah, let's go into that a little bit. Are you open to really hearing what I have to say?
Yeah, I was going to ask that first before I went on my tangent, because it's like, well, what's your perspective? Because you're not in my industry, and I do want to hear what you have to say.
Cool. Well, the first thing that I learned when I was in the automotive industry full time was you get out of the car business and you get into the people business. And it's not that obvious in your particular industry. Your industry is so technical that they're forgetting the human element of why people buy houses in the first place. Yeah. So when I wrote that book, that was the premise of it. People were like, oh my God, like, you've got like these amazing soft people skills. And I'm just like, well, I've had to deal with some of the most craziest people on the planet, which are automotive dealers. And the reasons why they're crazy is because, like, they always have people hitting them up for money. So they insulated themselves from that other world where, when I was traveling around all the time, that was the biggest thing. I was a human being coming into a very technical industry. Like, even if you listen to, like, if we go back and listen to what you said over 5 minutes ago, you were going more into like the specifics of the types of forms and all the other stuff. These people just want their house sold, or some people just want to buy something. Human beings are very simple creatures. And what we've unfortunately done in any industry that's a super technical industry, we have engineered the humanity out of it. And as a result of us engineering the humanity out of it, people get butthurt. And what do they do when they get butthurt? They sue, period. Because people will buy when value exceeds cost. And if we look at somebody, it's no different. I correlate what you're doing to just being a salesperson who's selling a car. They don't need to explain to the other person who wants to buy the car that they're a professional and that there's going to be a commission involved. Like, it doesn't matter, because there's some profit margins out there that are super intense for even automotive people. But the reality of it is, and I'll give you an example of this, like one of my buddies is a broker, just sold a $5 million house, just like that, because he's got the right list, he knows the right people, he's got the right connections, he's not in it full time, and he's one of the biggest personalities out here, which is the reasons why people come see him, because they already know that they're going to get taken care of. He doesn't have to negotiate a fee because they understand his time is worth something. What he sells is the sizzle, not the steak. And too many people, when I first actually started observing and studying and being in the industry, meaning that I was training specifically on that book, Close More Deals, the thing that I observed was just like, I'm like, man, you guys don't understand. Like, that's why they tell you to like do small things, like turn on the lights in the house, walk around the house. Like, this is the reasons why they tell you to do this stuff, is because it's a very human transaction. And it's not even a transaction in as much as it's both. Yes, the transaction closes the deal, but it's also a relationship industry. Like, I have another young lady out here. She's been with Christie's forever. She sells between 8 to 10 houses. The houses are between 2 to 10 million, if not more. You follow me? And she's selling to the same crowd over and over and over again, and she's getting referrals. To me, that's the ultimate thing, right? But she still puts in the work. She still has her personality. People know that she's going to make money off of them, and that's okay, because she's legitimately earned that right to be the expert. And even if somebody may come into her network cold, the reasons why they warm up so fast is because she's a very warm person. And you know that when you're there in front of her, that a transaction is going to happen. Let's just figure out what's really motivating and inspiring that person to want to do something with her. And then the outcome happens to be they get what they want, she gets what she wants. And it's not this like weird energy where it's like, well, I'm going to charge you a commission. It's like, come on now, everybody's got to eat around here. You follow me? So that's the viewpoint that when I wrote that book, I specifically focused in on, and it was called The Emotional Side of the Industry, because nobody talks about it. I'm just like, leadership's cool, but you have to understand what leadership really is. You don't just walk up and go, hey, I'm just a leader. Nobody does that. That's weird. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, you got to get appointed by the people who you're helping out. And then as a result of that, they tend to know, like, and trust you. And then they want to refer other people to you, because it is a very emotional purchase. And we tend to forget about that. And then especially with houses, a lot more can go wrong than right, especially if it's an older house, unlike a car. There's no certified pre-owned houses around, at least not that I know of. But my point is, there's a lot of aha moments and last minute adjustments versus just being upfront, like, hey, this is a fixer upper. This is what it is. Like, boom, 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 boom. You told me that you need this, this, and this, and I don't think enough of that relationship has been built in order to be able to go deep, to just be real. Like, you've already talked to Amy. That's one of Amy's specialties. She just said it yesterday. She was just like, hey, would you buy a house that was underwater? And she was talking to somebody else, and I was like, I would, but she was like, what do you know why? I was like, no, not really. She's like, well, because if it makes sense to do it, then yes. If not, then no. But as a person who needs to get that information from the person, if you don't have that relationship in the first place, you're never going to get that kind of data.
Yeah.
So that's where that book comes in, because it's two things that goes on. Number one, even though they may know, like, and trust you, there's still this what if moment that most people don't address up front. So if there's a bomb in the room, you want to diffuse it early before it explodes. Like, you just want to be able to just knock that out early, because that's going to give you more trust. And that's what I was trained on in the car business. It's just like, look, anybody can get a car. Like, they spend 16 hours online researching before they even come see you. So they already know what they want. And yet they're sitting here saying, I'm just looking. You follow me? It's just like, it's a built-in, baked-in mechanism that we all have, because it's all about self-preservation at the end of the day. So if we realize that, then it makes sense to go, okay, cool. Well, let me stop being so damn left brain and really understand that there's a human being in front of me. Right? We just don't harm the humans. You follow me? And that's really what I see that's missing in that industry, because anybody can talk about all the square footage and all the technical stuff about it, but why would somebody want to need that? You follow me? Like why would you even bring that to their attention? You follow me? Like, sometimes we tend to pick out too much and we're not listening. So it's a difference between listening to understand versus listening to just respond. And I see a lot of listening to just respond to people listen in the first place, in particular in that industry. That's what I see.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I can appreciate that perspective because and can I share a personal story with you?
100%.
Yeah, I am a very technical person and I know it. I'm a technician. When I got into real estate, like all of my uh all the things I did to get up to speed so I could be a better agent or realtor were very on the technical side. And I wasn't selling anything. But I'm also I'm also a person that cares a lot about people. And what I noticed within myself, I just had this, I have this voice in myself that's saying, hey, you're not connecting. There's a disconnect. And there's a reason why you're not selling houses because you're too mechanical. And so within myself, I was forced to shift, just with some deep thinking, and it came to me like, look, just be a human, be honest, be open, just answer the phone, talk to people, understand what they're looking for and give them exactly what they're looking for. Because what you said about the automotive industry, people are going online right now and they're researching what kind of car they want. Well, it's the same thing in the real estate industry. Before a buyer, even meets with a realtor, they've already looked at, who knows how many homes because they know exactly what they want. And it's, it's just that they have to make a phone call and they're going to get an agent on the phone. And so then that's how they start creating that's how that agent buyer or seller relationship starts developing.
When I want to jump in there real quick, I need to jump in there real quick because when I did my research at that point in time, almost 80% of the people, by the time they contact you, want to do business with you. Like they're not shopping as much as people in your industry think that they do, because they would rather get referred in, just like a lawyer, versus like having to go cold and then they have to trust. But they're not like actively, like on the car business, going from dealership to dealership to dealership looking for a salesperson. What they're looking for, particular in your industry, is legitimately like, hey, like I'm reaching out to you because I think like you're the closest thing or the closest person to who I can actually maybe talk to. Because there's a lot of people who can be on that like on the agency side say, hey, look, well, you guys got the lock boxes and everything. So as long as you got the code, anybody can go in there and just show the house, right? But
Yeah.
but for the most part, they're looking to connect with a human being. And then I really want to emphasize that because I dug deep when I was asked, because I was honored to be able to ask to write the book. Like I had no clue. Same thing in a few other industries. It's just like, well, if that works in the automotive industry, that could work over here. I'm like, I don't know, but I can tell you the general principles of like how human beings operate when it comes to like a high ticket purchase. Like, because that's my zone of genius. Because again, I got ripped off enough to know like, hey, I'm not going to be that guy. That's how I got into the automotive industry. As a matter of fact, I got ripped off on 2 cars, and it was like my wife was pregnant at the time, and I'm in the military. I'm not knowing no better. And then I refer all of these people to this guy. And then my commanding officer is like, you signed this? I'm like, yeah, I had no idea. You know what I'm saying? And I told about 10 other people. And then ironically, when I was out here in California, that same dealer and the same guy, I believe, was actually on 2020. And it's funny because I was living in San Diego at that point in time, and I popped straight out the bed. And my wife at the time was like, what's going on? I was like, that's where I bought my car. Oh my God, they're on 2020. You follow me? So I'm seeing that same phenomenon now, fast forward into 2024 and beyond, where it finally happened, but on a massive level, to where now on the association level, it's resonating across the whole country. That's the difference. So the automotive industry has already had that happen back in, because I worked with some of the largest brands out here that have had that legal trouble just for that reason. Because I'm a big compliance guy, like everybody in the car game who knows me knows that I was heavy on the compliance side. And that's how I was able to get, working on some capital stuff as well. So it's just like, when you're talking about how money moves, you have to understand how people operate. And then when you really get that idea to understand how money moves and why it moves a certain way, then you really get the idea of exactly how you need to communicate. So that way the transaction is a lot more simpler and the relationship is built. But I don't see anybody thinking that way because they just want to simply expose at that level. Like writing and working with underwriters for underwriting guidelines. And even I worked as an LO, a loan officer. So I get it. Like I did some amazing things. Like even my old trainer, Dave Hirschman, was one of those guys. He did Donald Trump's loans. So it's just like I learned professionally as much as I could. But what I understood at that time even was that, like, look, you have a right and responsibility to help this human out who's across the table from you. And that's how I started building my practice, was because it was just like, I got out of that industry, understand that there are humans on the other side of it, and I need to be able to present myself and also present the opportunity in a way where it's flexible enough, because not everybody really knows what they want. Like to me, that's an ultimate misnomer, because I've switched a lot of people off of cars, even as an example. But like even in your industry, the way that you ask the questions in a certain way will enable you to really help them when they're wanting help. If they don't want help, then it doesn't matter. And you've heard me say that all over the time. You've heard me say that time and time again. It's just like, look, if you are that firm on what you want, then good luck. I might not be your person, because in your specific case, that house might not be available at that time. You have a deadline that you have to meet for whatever reason. You know, maybe you're moving across the country, or maybe you're getting a divorce and you need to, or maybe you're an empty nester. You know, finally, like there's a lot of different dynamics that even when I was coaching and training that most people just don't understand, because they're not really assuming the viewpoint of the person who's going to eventually get that property. So that's just my 2 cents on it. And again, I really believe firmly that this is a giant wake-up call. Now the question is, are people going to wake up? That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. Because what I was going to go on to saying is, like, once that buyer decides to make a call, like you said, they've already decided to move forward in their purchase. And if they didn't get referred, then chances are they're making that call, and they're going to get connected with the agent. And the shift that I made, and when I was first starting out, is I became the person that's saying, hey, because like you said, that person's already decided if they're going to work with somebody or not. And now it's up to the professional to make a connection with them, as opposed to being too technical, just trying to pull that buyer through the process. So where I made my shift was going from, like, where I would get a call saying, hey, I want to go see, XYZ house. I used to run out the door, like, I could meet you there in 30 minutes, and fly out the door, and then, just start, just not ever developing a relationship with that buyer, and just thinking if I just showed them houses and did I didn't make no connection, no nothing. And it was always an awkward moment when we met up, because I would show up, they don't know me, I don't know them, and I'm showing them houses. And like you said earlier, at the time, because I was new, I didn't realize or understand how much of an emotional purchase it was, or process altogether, for the buyer. And until I made that connection, when I made that connection, I went from being that agent that went running out the door and chasing after business, to, like, keeping that buyer on the phone and saying, hey, I understand, you're looking for a house. Before I could meet you, let's set up a meeting or presentation. And if they were in so much rush, I might give them one freebie where I would meet them at the house. But then I would tell them, like, let's meet, let's talk, let me get to know you, let me get to know what your needs are, so I can really help you. And if they refused to meet with me and do that presentation so I can make a connection with them, then I just wouldn't work with them, because I knew that it just wasn't worth my time, and my chances of hire for making helping that buyer out would be lower, because we never made a connection. So I made that shift just automatically. But what I like in your book is, like you said, you point that out, that, this is not a sales is not a technical business, and humans are very simple. And if you're able to distinguish and make a connection with them, everybody knows that there's money involved, but no, and then there's the saying go that, people don't care how much you know, what they do care about is how much you care. And once you're able to make that shift in actually caring for the people that you're serving in any professional industry, then it's kind of like, the dark cloud that's now looming over the real estate professional industry. If you can make that shift in this industry, like that cloud would clear itself up, and business for everybody, would be a lot better, from the professional to the seller to the buyer, and it would just be, like, in my opinion and in my experience rather, it just made my life easier, and I established better relationships with my clients, and I even got more referrals out of it, because they knew, and they, they would call me back, and ask for advice, because I was that person. I became their ally. I became their friend. And I even used to market myself as, your friendly realtor. So, but yeah, you're spot on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And that's one of the reasons why, like, even in the industry, you can be in the industry, but not be of the industry. And I want to make that key delineating distinction, because even in the online marketing space and also advertising, and it's the same dynamics. Humans want help. And if we don't really identify that up front and understand that the mechanism is just a mechanism, who cares? It's just like, look, anytime I was traveling, the dealers always knew that I was there for something. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you just don't like leave out your house, travel, hang out for 2 weeks and nothing happens, right? So it's just like, what we have to understand is, like, we are all connected by the air that we breathe. And that's not some esoteric BS. It's like, legitimately, when I would go into any high-level negotiations, because some of these were tens of millions of dollars, some of them were actually one-call closes with billionaires. It's just like, it's the exact same principle. They got more money than God, so what do they really want? You follow me? So if we already get that idea that it's just like, they're already financially independent, especially the agents, I'm financially independent and I don't need the money, then the conversation just completely shifts. It's just one of those things where it's just like, naturally you're having a conversation with a friend, just like me and you're having a conversation right now. It's just like, it is that matter of fact. It's like, okay, look, you probably want me to hang out and show you like 50 homes. Come on. Like, what's really going on? You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you just have to call it out. Well, I'm not too sure about blah, blah, blah. And that's what I train on. It's like, legitimately, like, there's certain things that you should call out, certain things you should just let ride, certain things you should just really be able to observe. But if you're not in a position where you can think to observe, then it's just going to be very transactional. It's going to be very, just very one track. Then that's another thing. Like, everybody who's not even in the industry, who's ever bought a house, knows that, like, as an example, real estate people use NLP. It's just like, why? It's just like, why do I need to know what tools that, you use in order to try to control my mind or my thinking? It's like, have a real ass conversation with me. Like, I need help. Yeah, sometimes the conversation needs to stay on track. You know what I'm saying? Because people, dude, it's just crazy. It's mind blowing that we're even talking about this. I had more dealers and more people in your industry go, we can't figure out what technique you're using. I'm like, I'm just being me. Like, what are we talking about right now? That's being a little weird. It's just like, I just developed this uniqueness as far as having a conversation. It's like, look, this thing is $300,000. Okay, let's get that out the way. This is $2 million. I'm asking, like, one of the last things that I had to do was absolutely insane in my automotive career, was I had to convince a deal, because we had an overage of like $214 million of like inventory. It was crazy. So I had to convince the dealers to just like buy this inventory. They look like, Fred, you done lost your mind. They're like, I'm not even touching that. It's going to devalue everything. It was just a big mess. But my point in saying that, though, is that I earned the right to be able to walk up with them, and they knew for a fact, well, I was coming up that specific time, and they're just like, no. So if we look at like who we're talking to, even if it's like a cold referral, as just like a real friend, it carries over. Not everybody said no to me. Some people are like, yeah, I'd be more than happy to take them. Like, I need inventory and blah, blah, blah. But if we don't come to the game with like pure intention and a pure heart as to why we're there, they know that we're going to like make money. So why does that need to be the focus? You know, even like when I was training people in the automotive lane, because there's two ways that you make money, primarily selling cars. And there's more, but the two main ways are either the dealership sells a lot of volume, or they happen to make a lot of gross profit off of a client, right? So, and very rarely can people get both going at the exact same time. And there's more ways to actually do it, right? It's the exact same principle for you. Like, why would somebody, if you had house to house, be right there at the exact same time? Like, why would they want to pay more for the exact same type and style of house, all things considered, right? The reasons why is because they actually value the service for real. It is still a service-based industry. We have to understand that. But the other thing too is that what I have also seen, just like in the car business, is that there is always this subtle flex. You know, people driving up in their Teslas or wearing a $5,000 watches. That's kind of what gets people in trouble too. It's no different than like when I saw the top salespeople with their ring on and they've got on their Bruno Magli's and all this other stuff. It's just like, you kind of like put that over there for a second. Like, you need to understand that this human, the first time what they see, they go, sharp. You know, it's just like, get me out of here. That's what they see. But we don't think of that. We think it's like, I need to have this big watch. And I'm telling you, bro, it has been epic. This conversation is more epic than you understand. Like, literally, I've been in rooms where people have lost contracts in the tens and hundreds of millions of dollars just for that one simple reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, facts. Like, I got too many stories to demonstrate that. Because when the person feels as though like you're not, it's a form of connectivity. And if they don't really feel like you're connecting even on a subconscious level, then that's what shows up in these transactions. This is the reasons why people feel a certain kind of way, even if that's not the case. Like, I used to tell my wife and my kids and everybody else in the industry, I'm just like, look, dress a certain way, be presentable, you know, but you don't need to be flexing with like all the stuff that you've gained as a result of, you know, you helping out a lot of people, because some people take offense to that. So I'm always very mindful of like, what's that center point? And that's why I said it goes back into getting out of the industry that you're in and getting into the people business. That is hallmark. And if you can't get that idea, then you won't be in business for long, because you need humans. Like, it's not a zero sum game. And that's how what I observed in that industry in particular. Oh man, if I make this, if I make this transaction, it's literally going to impact my life, like straight up. So that's why they're so defensive. If that makes sense. Do you think I'm lying, or is there truth to what I'm saying?
Oh no, 100%. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's really nothing to say about that. So, and you reminded me, like, the reality of this whole situation with the real estate profession is just that, you know, it's, you know, I would say, you asked me what I think the problem is. And as you were talking, it came to me like that was the problem. We had a lot of people come into the industry in the past 10 years because they saw how much realtors make. And so they were all like, a lot of the, I would say all, but a lot of the people that got licensed, you know, 10 years ago up to now, you know, were all just, you know, focusing on like, oh, I can make a lot of money in real estate. I mean, to be honest, that's what I got into real estate for. But I quickly found out like, it's like that is the very last thing that you focus on. And the very first thing, like you said, are the people. And that's probably where the problems start happening with this whole lawsuit and stuff like that, is because there's too commission focused, which is why the news, I mean, even the data is saying, you know, commissions, you know, are now negotiable. That's where all the noise is at. So that's the problem.
Yeah, well, even in certain states like Florida, as an example, in the automotive industry, it's just one price shopping. It doesn't matter what it is when it comes on the finance and insurance side. It's like you don't state law, you don't change it or alter it by one penny, period. So when you understand that that's like one of the dynamics, then it's just like, okay, well, it's not about that at the point in time. It really is legitimately about talking about the value. So if we're able to really act as if the prices aren't going to change and fluctuate, and focus in on the person and focus in on the value, then that's when people tend to buy, is when value exceeds cost. So until we can really get to that level of understanding that there really is a skill of getting out of our own way. That's what we have to realize. That's the reason why I don't rock with everybody, because between pride and ego, and I learned this a long time ago from G.I. Joe, shout out to G.I. Joe, this was at a Honda store in San Diego at that point in time. He was like, Fred, if you want to make money in this game, you have to understand that pride and ego is what's going to kill a car purchase. It's stuck with me, period. It stuck with me. He was so good at what he did that even when he got quote unquote promoted, he made more money being outside talking to people than being inside doing the finance and insurance. I think he stayed for less than 4 days. He was like, I'm going back outside. I can't handle all of this paperwork and this management stuff. He's like, I need to be talking to people, because he really got it and crushed it. So when you get that kind of mentorship, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm seeing lacking in that industry specifically, because I've been to a lot of the 3-day seminars and the 1-day seminars. Like, I've been to a lot of them, and it's all the same stuff. It's like, hey, okay, you're pond scum, buy my stuff. It's direct response marketing, old school stuff. I'm like, dude, like, I feel like I was born in the 70s, but I don't need those reverse double knit slacks. You follow me? It's like I need to get some real high level stuff, because everybody knows the same stuff, and then it becomes more of a tactic versus just really understanding that there's a human being in front of you. You're more focused in on what you're going to do next versus listening to understand versus listening to just respond. I say this, you're supposed to do that. Money's supposed to magically slide across the table. It's like, what are we talking about? Like, that's not the way life works. It may, but in almost the 30 years I've been like training this stuff, I just don't see it. And it's a problem, because somebody else is perpetuating this myth when the whole industry has shifted, when the whole generations have shifted. I showed you that specific diagram straight from the Federal Reserve, showing that Gen Z is crushing it right now. The average median income is $259,000, like, period in the story. That's just for, that one segment. And that's sourced straight from the Federal Reserve. You can't argue with the people who are printing the money. So that's why it can get really ridiculous and pedantic real quick, because your ego will cause you to go over the top and go, well, it's not this. Well, no, that's the data, like, period. Like, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to take it, or are you just going to just pretend like it's this thing in the room that doesn't exist? Same thing in that industry, bro, because it's crazy how even when I got back to certain levels in the car business, I was like, man, I thought I was making a change. I'm like, wait, I did make a change. I said, but it's not over here in this particular area, because some parts of what you're going to do are just old school and they need to be disrupted. Yeah. So maybe this particular thing, while tragic and unfortunate, because it to me is like a win-lose anytime you get to that level, for the record, it's a wake-up call. And how you handle it, you can look at it as an opportunity to really understand that business is a business is people, and you have to be able to focus in on really serving the heck out of people, and they don't really care about the price. Of course, some people are going to do that. It is what it is. I'm not sitting here talking about roses and kumbaya kind of stuff, but overall, people understand that you have to eat, period. And if you take care of them, this is the reasons why people go upstream in these 5-star restaurants. There's a lot of money out here. The question is, are you communicating to get it? That's it. So when you understand these little small principles and these focuses that mean you've been talking about all of this time, then you start getting the perspective of how people really move and what they need and want, so that they get what they want, you get what you want, everybody's happy. Yeah, there may be a little bit of a haircut here and there as far as all of that commission stuff. That's fine. But we're not talking from a paperwork perspective first. We're not talking from a commission breadth perspective first. We're not coming from a super technical perspective first. We're coming from a human-centric perspective first. And that's hard for people. Most people are scared to be transparent and vulnerable in that industry because they don't want to look weak. Well, how's that working for you? You just got a huge lawsuit that just got shoved straight where you know where. And it's just like, that's a wake-up call. You can just think that's a one-off, but it's not, because you have a whole bunch of compounding people who said that similar problem, and now you have a class action. That's how it works. There were a whole bunch of hand raisers. Don't get mad at the lawyers because they're being savvy on it. They're just like, oh, it's just like marketing. Oh, you've got that problem. You got that problem. You got that problem. Well, let's all come together and talk about that problem, because we need to get paid. Mm-hmm. I can't get mad at somebody who wants to get paid because something happened that they see as an opportunity. So we need to take that same viewpoint. Like, how do you see the opportunity in this lawsuit? Like, how are you able to shift And what behaviors and patterns do you have that are now straight up limiting beliefs? And then you have to accept that. And then once you accept that, then it's like, okay, well, what happens next? Because when you're ready to learn, the teacher always appears. But it's going to be some strong-headed people, just like it is in any industry. I'm telling you, because I used to say it. It's just like you're gonna have some strong super alphas, but nobody's bank account lasts that long to be able to fight that. It's just too much momentum, and it's too much of a pattern. And then what happens is you're what's the principle of it? Okay, well, how much money do you have to fight over your principle? It's just like, good luck on that one. Straight up, it's just like you just accept it. It is what it is, and we focus and we move on to how we can become better servants. And that's true. Like that's truly servant leadership at its highest practice. Is because again, when you transcend all the noise, when you transcend all the tools and the techniques and the negotiation strategies and all of this stuff, what's left is a human being. And that's where I tend to operate from. Now, you've got to understand, yes, we still have to close, but there's a way that you have to close because that's not a sale at that level. It is a close. You are closing on a very specific idea. That's why when I'm talking to these Mickey Mouse sales traders, I'm just like, y'all don't even understand the difference between a sale versus closing. And I'm a closer. Like you, when you're talking to dealers who got big money, it's $1 million deals and tens of millions and hundreds of millions and $1 billion deals. You're closing, period. It's not this other stuff. But we have to be able to be humble in a way. More of that later. We have to be able to have a space where we can listen to understand versus listen to respond. And we have to also be in a space of service. And I would put that one first. You know, really understand that somebody's there in front of you, honor the energy, and just figure out how you both can get what you want and just make it as smooth as possible because speed is power. That's it.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, in the middle of everything you just said, you had mentioned something about, you know, the tragedy of this situation. I don't see it as a tragedy at all. It's more than opportunity. And the people I think that do see it as a tragedy are going to be the ones that they just don't get it. And they you know, but for the ones that see it as an opportunity, there's a lot of good that is actually going to come out of this in terms of, like you said, and you know, you talk about the far technical side and then the other practical side and how to find a balance in between the two. The industry for the real estate has become too technical, and if it stays that way, nothing's going to change. And all the people that stay on that side, you know, are going to have a very hard time adjusting to the changes. So now's the time to get to that practical side, the people side, and really start connecting and understanding, you know, human beings. And it's not hard, but for some people it is hard if they're not even open to, you know, understanding what that is. Like you said, it's all about understanding, not just responding. So thank you for that. I understand. So it's like, let's go.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about it. So let's clearly define tragedy in a specific context. So tragedy in this specific context means that you're in a calamity right now. It is a misfortune because as a result of other entities getting in to see what's legal and what's not legal, there's misfortune here. So it is tragic by dictionary definition in this particular instance. So when I'm looking at it from a very technical side, here's where I get technical, because now I have to be able to not become emotionally compromised to see where the opportunity really lies with this. So when you really look at what a lawyer does, they look at tragedies and they figure out where the opportunity is. It from a calamity viewpoint. Okay, if you read the dictionary right now, you're going to see that in black and white. Well, what I'm particularly saying is that there's a technology involved with really thinking through situations so that you can see the opportunity. And as an opportunist capitalist like I am, it is my duty and responsibility, since I think like this, to be able to articulate it in a way where people can benefit. So it's all win. This is the problem that we're facing right now. The bigger question is, where is the all win in the situation? Now, you can spot it however you want, which is fine. That's the reason why we have viewpoints, right? But when I, as a direct response marketer that I am, I'm always looking for exactly clearly defining what a situation is, so that way we can find the opportunity in it, because this is how innovation works. So somebody's going to be super innovative in your industry. It could be you, it could be other people, it could be me just training like I was doing before. Like there's a real opportunity here, but we can only see it if we observe exactly what's happened. I always tell my clients, look, you got to go back to the scene of the accident. It may be ugly, but something happened, and we need to turn back around a little bit to see exactly what's happened. I didn't say to the point where people are really like at that level where they're suffering and dying and people, but you never know. People could get addictive behavior and patterns as a result of losing things like that. That's a reality as well. So I look at things holistically to see how this can impact people on different levels. So the question is, what part of that impact do you want to handle? Because we can only do but so much in our lifetime, right? So what I specifically am looking for in this particular opportunity, so to speak, is how we are able to just move forward so that it's an all-win on all levels. Because to me, that's the right thing to do. It's about really just taking that power, because somebody thought that you were more powerful than them. They said, hey, I'll show you. They filed a lawsuit and they won. And there was a whole bunch of other people who felt that way. That's called a trend. That's not me. That's not you. It's what it is. So it's a trend. Okay, identified a trend. And now from there, we work to figure out how we can take advantage of it, because somebody else is. Period. There's going to be some carnage in between all of that stuff. But what I'm mainly focusing on right now specifically is how can I communicate better so that this never happens again?
Right.
How can I even make even more money as a result of this happening? And I proved that in the car business with compliance, straight up. Because one of the biggest things that was notorious in that industry was the way that the numbers were being disclosed, and dealers got in trouble for it all the time. But I'm like, well, what if there's this way where it's in print, it's in black and white, and you explain it in a way where you're actually going to make money, more money than you ever thought possible? And the dealers who got on board with that mindset were absolutely crushing it, getting more referrals. It got institutionalized in a few other big places, and hence the revolution started in that industry. Like, that's what happened. So you can take the bull by the horns, and as a result of that, really understand that people are wanting and needing to hear you speak a certain way, and you're going to attract them. They're going to come out the woodworks. But until we can see it that way, it's just going to be another transactional industry, and we hope that we don't like get sued again. You follow me? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, I call that an STE, a sphincter tightening experience. You know what I'm saying? It's like you only got but so much in your coffers before you go broke. Like, I don't care who you are on this planet. That's just the way it works. So we have to be mindful of the energy that's there and honor the people who are actually making a statement. And then you go, okay, am I part of the problem? Am I not a part of the problem? Like, you start really looking in the mirror really hard, and you start really reflecting to see exactly how you can get your A game up. Because right now, whoever's A game was at the top, you just got broken. So now your A game is your F game. So now you have to work to figure out what your A game looks like now in this new normal, because it's going to shift. And you said August, there's going to be even a greater shift. So
yeah. Because I mean, that's basically, once the changes come in, and I mean, it's just going to change the practice altogether. And there are some technical things that the professionals are going to have to learn. But like you said, if that's all they learn, then, it's just going to become this, a tragic, it's even more tragic situation than it already is. And we're just going to be asking ourselves, well, when's the next lawsuit going to come in if it doesn't change the way we've been doing things?
Yeah. A major thing just happened like that in the online marketing space. It's always going to happen when people feel as though they're being treated unfair. Whether they're being treated unfair or not, it's all perception. It doesn't matter. That's why I am so direct as humanly possible to be like, hey, look, this is what you're getting. This is what it is. This is what it does. Do you want it? Yes or no? And that came from just training thousands of finance managers in the automotive industry. And some of these guys, even up to when I would just they are still stapling and doing all kinds of crazy things. Like people aren't going to like open up the letters and all of this other stuff. And this is like 2024. I'm like, what are you doing? This is like so old school. Are you not aware of what's happening right now? But you're always going to have those people out there. It is what it is. But most, just like most people remember the most positive stuff, they'll also remember the most negative stuff. So we really have to like be spot on with who we are, what we're for, what we're against. And it needs to be in all of our messaging. It needs to be in all of our brochures, all of our marketing, all of our advertising. That's the reasons why what we're doing over there from Vision to Victory, like that's why that is set up specifically for this reason. Because when you get to a certain point where you're getting more visibility, what you want to be able to do is have a lot more credibility by clearly and conspicuously posting exactly what you're for and what you're against. Don't believe me? Go to Costco. They have their mission statement and value statement right there. You don't believe me? Go to Sprouts. They got the exact same thing. I think like all of these other big chain brands have that in black and white because that's what it is. It puts everybody at ease. Something that small puts people at ease. You know, it's really one of those things where people are looking for some type of certainty in this whole process, and they're looking for some type of security because it is a lot of money. Like, I don't care. Like, people can say, oh, $1 million, because I heard some idiots talk about, oh, if they're not, like, stop all of this stuff. Their perceptions, their reality, you have to honor the energy, and if they're too below you, then you don't need to be talking to them, period.
Right.
You know, everybody has a different lane as far as where their sweet spot is. Like Mariah Carey, she can probably sing all 8 octaves, but she makes her money in these 2 ranges right here. You follow me? It may bore her to death, but me working for in finance and insurance for a long time, boring money is good. You want something that's just going to be so stable. It's just printing money and that's it. Now with AI, you don't have to do it too much, you know, but that's the thing about it though, bro. It's just like what people have to understand in any industry is that machines are only going to do but so much. You know, this soft people skill stuff that we're talking about, no computer or no AI is ever going to be able to duplicate that effectively. Now, what may happen is some people still get, you know, suckered in, so to speak, but their sophistication level, that's something that I can't talk to because I don't know. But what I do know is that, like, I spent my whole life just making sure that I can connect with people because that's what's going to build the rapport that you need to get them past those hurdles that they're experiencing in their mind. They may not tell you everything, you know. It's just like when me and you talk. I'm like, yo, bro, can I be real? Can I talk to you like a brother? Like, we don't. It's no mask. You follow me? And I think that industry is getting there. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're crying, oh, I need to get a house. You know, it doesn't mean that you're like, you know, swinging your umbilical cord around and doing some crazy stuff. But what it does mean is just that, like, it's becoming a lot more human because of all of this machinery. It's actually a game of opposites, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's just being authentic. Really, it's not even really being a game of opposites. If you're presenting yourself with who you are, I mean, obviously you want to present your best self if you're in sales, but it's also authenticity, you know, and really connecting with the people that you connect with, by knowing who you connect with. If you don't know those things, and you're trying to connect with everybody and be somebody that, you know, be everything for everybody, then that's going to propose some challenges as well. So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was about to say there's also this concept that I've seen in your industry called unintentional invalidation, because sometimes, like, what I've discovered is that, like, we try to be sometimes too helpful in any industry versus really, like, listening to really understand what that person just said and maybe even recapping it just to make sure that we got it right. And something that small will give somebody the certainty and security that they need to really know that for a fact that you're listening to them. So that's one of the reasons why, like, the soft people skills, I think, in your industry are definitely wanted and needed. But the question is, are people really willing to invest? Because on one hand, you have a system that does work, but then on the other hand, you have this blip on the screen, because that's how some people are going to look at it. And they may not see this ever happening again, which it could. Maybe it could happen again next year. Maybe it could happen 4 years from now. But the bottom line is, it was significant and substantial enough to rate this kind of conversation.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, at the end of the day, it's good. If it does happen again, then, the professionals in the industry are going to have to question, their associations. And one of the good things coming out of this is that, as professional, if you want to be a realtor, you have to associate with just one group, which is, AR. But what I've learned, as when I've been doing the research on what everything is going on, is that there's other brokerages, like Redfin, like Remax, and like, and even other associations being created because of the dissatisfaction with the value that NAR is giving their members. I mean, to me, they're doing a really good job, but it's too far on the technical side. And so it's creating, other groups that are, like you said, connecting more with the people and really the service and the value and the authenticity. And so, if the training in the association doesn't, if the mindset, forget the training, if the mindset in the association doesn't shift from technical to, getting, back to the, like, we're in the people business, then the professionals that are associated with that group are, at the end of the day, they're going to have to save themselves and find a solution like what you've offered, to many people in our industry and other industries with Vision and Victory and Close More Deals, or other groups that are teaching, not teaching, but helping people, helping the professionals, understand number one, who they are. And then number two, just bringing it to their awareness that this is a people person and this is how you connect with people. If you don't know, if you're somebody like I was, where I was more technical side, and I still am, my default is technical, but I've trained myself, or conditioned myself rather, in a way to where, like, this is people. There's real people, and all they want are help. And if I'm the professional, then my duty and my job to, my obligation to these people are to connect with them and give them what they want, and aside from, all the other things that are going to happen as a result. But yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think needs to happen next in closing?
I mean, in closing, just what I was saying, just bringing to the awareness that, there is a problem, through the definition as a tragedy, but, where to find the opportunities at, and seeing this as an opportunity to become a better human, to become a better realtor, to become a better professional, whatever industry that you're in. And that is, just paying attention to, everything that you've been doing in terms of getting business, and then asking yourself, key questions. And if you don't know what questions to ask, then, you need to get a mentor. You need to get on call with somebody that can point out those questions, somebody like you, somebody like myself that, can really help bring this stuff to light. So.
Awesome. Definitely appreciate you coming through on the Mind's Eye podcast. I really honor the energy and space, and people want to get a hold of us, they can always join the free Facebook group where they can actually get the book Close More Deals, and we'll chat with them later.
Yeah, definitely. Fred, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, and I'm honored to be on this podcast and just be able to have this conversation with you, and I'm glad we made the connection that we did. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, brother. Likewise. So stay on.
All right.